Schnitty T, your brick wall looks like it will fall down. No, it's pretty steady, I think. Beep boop 2424 cam style, you know it. Look at me, baby. Woo! In case you didn't notice, the government dropped its net zero modeling for how it's going to get to net zero by 2050. And I'm getting the sense that I think it left a little bit to be desired, as in both in terms of what we're actually doing to deal with climate change and also what the actual details were in it. So let's pull some up. Beautiful. So net zero by 2050 modeling. Yeah, we'll go with news.com.au by Helena Burke. After weeks of waiting, Australians are finally able to see the economic modelling that has informed the federal government's goals and strategies to achieve net zero by 2050. Speaking in Melbourne on Friday afternoon, Prime Minister Scott Morrison announced the modelling would be released later today. The major findings are that reducing the cost of low-emission technology can provide net benefits, obviously. There are a range of pathways to developing the reductions. Adopting net zero by 2050 provides economic benefits to Australia. Yep, people have been saying that for quite a while. Jobs and output growth grows across all major sectors, including mining. And alternative approaches to achieving net zero involves additional costs and risks. The modelling is a simplified version of Australia's predicted future, which allows the government to observe, understand and make predictions about the economic impacts of its net zero by 2050 plan. The analysis released only today compares a scenario where Australia does not take any climate action or adopt a 2050 target versus following the government's net zero 2050 plan that was released last month. However, it does not compare this to more ambitious climate targets. So we have no way of knowing whether all the taking more drastic action to deal with climate change that's affecting us right now would actually improve things. The government didn't bother to ask. And you reckon they could have done a little bit of work on it, but I guess not. So Greg Jericho writes on economics for The Guardian, and he was doing some tweeting about it, which was quite useful. The big thing that I saw was that so here's one thing. Taylor's modelling, so Angus Taylor's modelling increases the amount of gas-fired power on Australia will increase during that time. And also that coal won't reach zero until 2050. Right? Okay, cool. This was the big thing that kind of jumped out that I saw as well. They're saying in 2050, they will still produce 215 megatons of CO2 a year, and of that, only 94 will be offset. So we'll leave rather more than zero by 2050. Essentially, this net zero plan at the moment doesn't actually model specifically getting to net zero. It models getting closer, but they've just left out a certain amount. Here's another chart showing that. So as you can see on the right, we've got what this plan is that was outlined today. And on the, you can see this is how much CO2 we're producing. And as you can probably see, we've got this number 94, which, I don't know, to me seems like it's a bit more than the zero that we were promised. Super psych. It's the Australian way. Close enough. It's good enough. Polythium high, by the way. You said zero. Exactly. We're pretty close. Beep boop. 2424. 94 is better than zero. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that this remaining amount is that 15% which they'd actually promised us before, which was due to further technology breakthrough. So let's look through how their plan to get to net zero by 2050, which I don't need to remind you is like a target that if we only do net zero by 2050, we are locking into catastrophic climate change. So this is even being like, we're still going to like destroy the earth. This is how their plan works. So reductions to date, 20%. technology investment roadmap. So that's technology stuff that we do here. Global technology trends. Then some offsets. And then at the very end, further technology breakthroughs, additional to global technology trends and technology investment roadmap. Sure. It's just like, it's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they're not even trying. And I guess the question is, who is this message for? Like, is the average person, besides say someone who's kind of anti-climate change, are they going to see that and understand that? I don't think so. So who is it actually indicating it to? Is it indicating to analysts and people in business who depend on that? Probably. But what a bizarre thing to do. And so let me let you in on a secret of politics. Modeling is complete bullshit. Like, modeling is just guesswork. And the really good people at modeling are people who are able to take really good guesses. And there's a lot of bad modeling out there, which is, when people will often go to, say, consultants, even to, scientists, and say, we would love, essentially hint, we would love to get a model that shows us this result. You can show anything with a model. So often they can be massaged in very, beneficial ways to some people. So, for example, the guy who did, or one of the people who did this modeling, right, is a guy who did modeling back in 2019 for the Menzies Institute, which said that getting to net zero by 2050 would cause us $600 billion worth of loss. Now it's the same guy who is responsible for saying, actually, no, it's going to be good for us. So, yes, things have mildly changed in the last 2 years, but it's also just showing that if you want an answer, you can just get an answer just by fiddling around with little details. I mention all that to point out that if Scott Morrison and the government wanted a model that actually answered everything, that actually got us to net zero, they could have got one. They could have got one that didn't leave out this 15% at the end, but that's not what they did. They just did this piss weak version, which shows that even as far as trying to deceive people or mislead people, the fact that they are not going all the way to net zero is not a mistake. It's an intention. They're trying to show that it does not work for them like that. Anyway, so that is that. Look, people in politics will often put out stuff on a Friday afternoon that they don't want people to talk about too much, because they're like, people going the weekend, there's less reporters on tomorrow. They, governments and all politicians will release news on Sunday with the intention of setting the agenda for the week. By the time we get to Monday, there's going to be new stuff to talk about, and most people, or a lot of people, switch off over the weekend. So the idea is that they put this out there, now they can say that they've done it, and they can then go on with their lives. And I guess the point is, if this is something that you care about, like Constababble, this is something you have to keep talking about. Now, there was a pretty interesting interview today. I don't know, I got a fair bit of coverage. It was on 3AW.
Prime Minister, we're talking Prime Minister Scott Morrison. You ever told a lie in public life?
I don't believe I have. No.
How does it feel when a former mate, Malcolm Turnbull, calls you a serial liar?
Well, look, I'm in politics. People take sledges at me all the time, Neil. Anyone in public life.
Yeah, but he's your mate. He was a friend, and he's saying you have always been a liar. That must hurt.
Look, Neil, I've learned in public life over a long period of time to not have a thin skin.
You got a former Prime Minister of Australia, you got a French President, both calling you a liar, and it doesn't worry you? Even politically, personally.
No, because I'm making the right decisions, Neil.
What do we reckon? Has Scomo always told the truth? Do you believe him? If he was a liar, would he have told us? Yeah, so Jakey Potatoes is a good point. Maybe I should pull it up now. of what he wrote about in his book about Scott Morrison. But, you know, I did see actually someone say, well, here's the thing. The first thing is that I saw some people saying that Scott Morrison would have intentionally planted this question to get ahead of it so that he could have his spin on it. And I personally don't think so. I think that any time that he spends talking about him lying, his credibility is a fight that he's not going to win. So I'm not really like, I don't really buy that. But the second thing was people saying, well, like, why would you ask someone if they're a liar? Because if they lie, well, they're just going to say they don't, right? But I think there is a kind of use, because what you do is you give people an opportunity to say, you know, he could have come out then with almost like an admission. He could have said something that was like, you know, kind of, well, you know, in the past, or like, you know, I've said stuff that I regret, or that you know, I've definitely spun things, but I'm really, you know, trying to be committed to the truth. Or like he could have like admitted something, but he just didn't. I mean, like, to say that he's never lied is in itself a lie, and reinforces a message that people know. So, I mean, I think it was a good question. But here's what Sean wrote in his book, which people seem to be quite enjoying. For Morrison, each moment stands alone. For him, an interaction demands only what it demands. He will do what needs to be done at that precise point in time. He never feels in himself insincere or untruthful, because he always means exactly what he says. It is just that he only means it in the moment he is saying it. Past and future disappear. It's very postmodern of Scomo. But I thought it was such a good opportunity to... I wanted to talk about this, which is that I think that the last month has actually been has been quite a bad one for Scott Morrison. And I want to like set your minds back like a month ago, where something was going to happen on climate change. He was going to go to COP26. People were saying, well, like, you know, climate change is an issue that people care about, but they don't care about necessarily that much. The subs things that had happened, but people were like, well, like, you know, how much does that matter? So then he went to, like, they got this deal of net zero. Net zero. Not really, but they secured a symbolic announcement for an unknown amount of money given to the nationals. And then he went to it was the G20, and when Macron had that moment where he said, I don't think I know, when he called out a liar and then started this, you know, media cycle, which did go for a few days. I'll admit, I was like pretty skeptical. I was like, I agreed with the take, which was, who cares what President Emmanuel Macron thinks? Like, I know it's getting a lot of coverage in the media. I know, and I think part of the reason that he gets a lot of coverage in the media is because someone like Emmanuel Macron, who's this kind of like centrist leader, you know, very well dressed, very erudite, you know, has defeated a kind of far right person in the past, is a bit of a technocrat. He seems to really appeal to people like, I would say, the people working in Australian media. So he got a lot of coverage, but I kind of thought to myself, it's probably like a bit overblown, to be honest. Like, is your average Australian who isn't as plugged into the media cycle as probably all of us are, because why else would you listen to someone who talks about politics on a Friday afternoon? Like, do they know the name of the French president? Do they care that he says that? Do they have any idea what billions of dollars means? And I don't mean this in a disparaging way. Like, I don't really know how to, like, when I hear billions of dollars, my mind just turns off. Like, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head how much the nuclear submarine steel cost, how much we're losing because we went away from the French. So, like, obviously we're losing some money, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So, in short, I thought that, like, this was kind of going to be a bit overplayed. Like I thought, you know, this would be a lot less substantial than anything you did back at home, because ultimately, like, who cares what the French say, right? But that changed this week when I heard, when I saw. So I mean, the first thing is that if you look at, so this is a central poll. Genuinely.